Hey, what's up? Welcome to another episode of your most favorite podcast of all the time, What's Up Conversations, a podcast with great icons of the video game industry. I'm your host, HR Nikofar, and this episode is one of the coolest episodes I've ever done. My fantastic guest is Sarah Lynn, producer at Firaxis Games, a mega talented girl behind my favorite games such as Civilization and XCOM series. She was so kind to tell me about her career producing games and playing games, and we wanted to make this episode a special one for the girls of the industry to motivate them to help them find their way, and Sarah's insight is really gold in this one. Please subscribe, follow, and share this podcast wherever you're listening or watching. This would really help, and I will be a happier man. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sarah Lynn. Welcome to What's Up Conversation, Sarah. It's so good to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah? Social
interaction.
Yeah. So, how's your daily life with coronavirus?
Oh boy. Well, it's certainly not something I ever expected to experience. All things considered, it's fine. Like, my work, I still have it. My mom's a waitress, so she's out of work right now, which sucks. But I'm lucky. I can work from home. I've picked up a couple of new hobbies. So it's all right. I mean, it sucks, but it's all right.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm interviewing people as usual.
Nice.
So, what do you suggest for the teams working remotely now?
Oh boy. Yeah. So I'm really extroverted. So that part is very hard on me. And I don't know that Zoom meetings necessarily fulfill that social aspect that I was used to getting in the office. But there's a couple things that we've been doing just to kind of try to help the work from home thing with some of my teams that I guess I can share. So we do this isn't really helpful for work, but it's helpful for your spirits, which in turn makes good work.
Yeah.
But we do water cooler breaks, and we'll just start up a Zoom meeting that's not work related, and people can just come in and chat and be like, "Hey, are your kids driving you crazy? Yeah, mine too." Things like that, and just kind of hang out and get a little bit of that relief that you would get in the office typically, and that's been so helpful. But besides that, I mean, I put on some chill lo-fi music and light a candle and kind of make it just a pleasant place to be.
Yeah. So make it work, not make it home.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't get to listen to music out loud at work, so that's kind of a good thing that I've gained, which I appreciate. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's really different, and it's definitely gotten hard to get used to, but thank God it's 2020. We have the tools, at least for my industry, to keep going.
Yeah. So XCOM Chimera Squad is out now. Congratulations on the release, and as always, you guys nailed it perfectly.
Oh yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So now that the game is out, how do you see the development of Chimera Squad, and what were the goals behind making this game?
I think so. I wasn't around during the first think tank periods, but I think so much of that game came out of the idea of, wouldn't it be cool to be the aliens? We're a very gameplay focused studio, so everything comes from the gameplay first. So these aliens have cool abilities. Torque can do the tongue pull and the bind. Axiom has these great powerful smash abilities. Verge and his psychic mind powers. We had a little bit of that with humans, but putting that alien element into it just made it very different and very cool. And it was fun to kind of bring this team together, which had a mix of XCOM people, some Civ people, and just kind of like try new formulas and try new things.
How long did it take to make Chimera Squad?
We actually legally can't comment on release timelines.
All right. So, Sarah, your career is very inspiring. In a relatively short period of time, you become the producer at one of the most successful companies in the game industry. So please take us through your journey to inspire everyone, and especially young girls wanting to get into the industry.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so I guess my story, I always played a lot of video games growing up. It was definitely like from the start of life. Like my mom was playing Super Mario when she was pregnant with me. And so like when I could finally hold a controller, yeah, she's like, okay, you're playing now. So, you know, I've always been around games. They've always been a hobby for me. And I always thought, you know, it would be cool to make them, but when I was young, I didn't quite grasp the idea that it was a real job that people could like have.
Oh yeah.
So I definitely like spent a lot of time being like, oh, that would be cool, but there's no way. So, you know, I went off to college to get my English degree, to be a writer, because that seems way more stable, of course. And I had a lot of other aspirations growing up, like, you know, forensic scientist, veterinarian, not good at science, didn't work out. But I happened to meet someone in my Japanese class in college, and he was a local game designer. He was just taking the class for fun. And he was like, yeah, you know, as we became friends, he's like, do you want to come to the studio and like see this prototype that we're working on and try it out, give me feedback? I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Okay. So I did. And that was actually, I got a design internship there.
Where was it? Was it Firaxis?
No, this was actually Big Huge Games. When they were, okay, so Big Huge around here went through a lot of iterations with different publishers. But that was back in like 2008 or so. So yeah, I started there, and you know, my internship ended and I was still in school. So I got a job doing outsourced QA for games that nobody listening has ever heard of. But you know, I learned a lot. Like I got to meet local people that were still in the industry and like stay a part of it. And then eventually I landed at Firaxis and I worked in QA. My first game at Firaxis was actually XCOM Enemy Within, or Enemy Unknown. And I remember my interview when I came to Firaxis and they were showing the like concept art board, and it had like the little sectoids and like, I think it was actually the gas station, that famous map. And I was like, oh my God, this game looks tight. Like I want to play this. I want to work on it. And I did.
So were you familiar with their games, like Civ series?
So I had actually played like, I think a little bit of Civ Rev, maybe Civ 4, but it wasn't a type of game that I gravitated towards. So yeah, I was definitely a Civ noob. And it was cool because I actually worked a little bit of QA on Civ, and that was how I learned it. And working with like people that really know the game and are really passionate about it is a great way to learn. But yeah, so I started there, or started here at Firaxis in QA, worked up to QA manager, and then went into production and worked production on Civ 6.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're the producer at Firaxis Games, and I want to know everything that a producer does making a game such as XCOM. Tell me everything from the very moment you wake up each morning till you punch out.
Well, first I have a lot of coffee.
Noted.
Yeah, it's funny because production is a very different job every day, which I think is why I love it so much. It's, you know, at its base level, it's the project management. It's making sure that we're completing what we need to complete on time and with the resources that we have. Beyond that, it's making sure that like the artists have the tools that they need and that people are communicating with each other. We've got this very cool, unique position where, as producers, we see the game as a whole. And most developers only really see like their small slice of the pie. So we can kind of foresee issues with, okay, so when all these guys come together, is it going to work still? Like, make sure everyone's still kind of running in the same direction. Um, a lot of people refer to it as herding cats because cats have a tendency to just like wander out and you have to keep them going in like the same direction. And I think that's a good analogy. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, like it's helping out wherever you can, being like kind of a super glue on the team. I know a little bit of scripting. I can go into like INI files and fix bugs, assigning bugs, finding bugs, playing the game every day.
Wow.
Yeah,
and it must be very hard right now concerning the situation of Corona.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean,
it's a new challenge.
Communication is like the number one thing that makes a business run. And that's like a hard thing when everyone's at home and like sometimes schedules are a little bit different because like X person has a child at home that's crawling all over them. And this person, like maybe their husband works and she's not in until this time now. So yeah, it definitely just, it's gotten a lot more challenging.
Oh yeah. So what is the best way of producing a producer? I'm talking about companies that are keen on educating their talented employees to become future producers. How did, for example, Firaxis help you to learn the craft?
Oh, that's a great question. I like that. Producing a producer. I think there's a lot of the skills that are innate in like people. It definitely takes a certain amount of being able to read people, knowing that, you know, everyone who makes this product isn't a cog in the machine. This is a person. Like everyone has their own interests, their own strengths, weaknesses, and just tailoring the way that you're making the game to, you know, the people on your team and making sure that everyone has what they need and is working in a way that's effective for them. Like one artist might be very good at like more organic things and another artist is not so good at that and it takes them much longer. Like who are you going to put where? So I think like who you are as a person is definitely a big part of it. But like for me, I came from QA, so I got a chance to kind of see all of the different disciplines from that level and how everything fits together, which is a huge part of it. Just knowing like, you know, how the engineers work with artists and all of the different the pieces of the puzzle and how it all fits together is really important. I think a lot of really great producers do come from QA. And it's funny, I think actually a lot of the reason that I didn't look into this industry sooner is because I was like, I'm not an artist and I can't program. What could I do? And like production wasn't a thing that I had known existed or even thought about. But when I was in QA, you know, it was something that I saw and like how they work with all of these other really talented people. So it kind of gave me some insight there.
That's fantastic. So you talked about starting as a QA. So some people might think it is a fun and easy job, but it's a very hard and sometimes frustrating responsibility that interestingly helps a lot to understand the ins and outs of making a game. So some of my favorite people, as you mentioned, in the industry started out as testers. So please talk about the experience in this, your experience in this field, and how much do you suggest it to the newcomers?
I think QA is a great way to get almost a bird's eye view of how the industry works. If you aren't in school for game development, or even if you are, honestly, it's a great way to see the different pieces of the puzzle. But yeah, I mean, like it's a tough job. Like you're playing sometimes very broken, very gray box brand new levels, assets. It's not pretty. You need to have phenomenal communication. Yeah, it's a tough job. It's not just playing games all day.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about two of my favorite games from Firaxis, starting with Civilization. I believe a Civ series is the perfect game, not only to understand history, but mostly important to understand politics. Some days ago, I was talking to one of my friends, and we were talking about tyrants of the history. So that when you play a Civilization game, you kind of understand what's going on in their heads. Imagine playing a Civ game, and at the beginning of the game, when you just have a small tribe, you decide to just keep it that way, like saying, you know what, I'm going to keep it a small country and tend to my people so they can live in the best situation possible. The feel of expanding, having more territory and ruling over more lands and people is so tempting that a devastating war from your top-down view is only natural. So, well, this is my experience of playing Civ games. It's also a zen zone, and when you come out of this game, you feel kind of like a different person, like you've been using a time machine. And what do you feel? And again, I'm emphasizing on the feeling when you play a Civ game, as a gamer, of course.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, I love what you just said, because it really kind of encompasses like Civilization as a series and Civilization like as a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I'm playing, I'm definitely, oh God, I think I definitely lean culture. I want to feel like my people have this very unique way of being, which is like, a little bit more abstract to the mechanics of it, but just spreading that culture and being like, oh yes, you guys can be cool like us. And it's definitely like that kind of colonization mindset. And it's really interesting to see how that plays into the gameplay of the game. But it's funny because like I know people who play it very peacefully, people who have like, a very small area, and they're like, oh, we'll just be like nice traders. And then there's people who are very like aggressive. Yeah, and just like conquering everyone. And I'm not a militaristic player, mostly because I suck at it. But yeah, it's just so funny because the way people play isn't necessarily who they are as a person too, which is just, it's wild to me. But that's kind of one of the cool things about that series is there's just so many ways to approach it to get like this very different feeling of how you're like progressing.
Yeah, that must be interesting to see, for example, testers playing different empires, like using different methods. That's a really hard game to track when you're in QA, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many different systems and they all work together. It's a very, very challenging game to test. And because some people do tend towards certain play styles, you have to make sure that like all of your testers on a game like Civ are doing these, they're all like approaching it differently than each other. Because if you have an entire test department of people that are just playing like science games, you're not going to get that the testing of like the conquering and the culture victories. I did an exercise back when I was QA manager, and I was like, okay, these are profiles I have made of gamers. This is like Chad. He is a conquering player. Like he's 21. He's got
Chad the Conqueror.
Chad the Conqueror. Like I created these archetypes of players and like handed them out to my test department. I was like, this is who you are today. Like, don't play as you, channel Chad and play this game like Chad. And let's see what we find.
Wow. That's so interesting. So XCOM now. The series is, of course, a cult hit, but Firaxis Enemies Unknown has started this wave of clones in the past decade that every tactical strategy games nowadays are compared to XCOM, and yet you're still doing it and doing it fresh each time. For example, Chimera Squad has some innovation and interesting approaches towards the genre, and I'm sure they all will be cloned sooner or later. But what is it about the XCOM that makes it so appealing and exciting for gamers and game developers?
Oh man. I mean, I think that so I heard someone refer to it as an action strategy game once, and I think that that really kind of nails what makes it very unique. Um, they're, turn-based tactics games kind of scratch that same gameplay itch, but they don't have the necessarily action element that for people like me kind of brings them more into strategy games and tactics games. And it's just, I think that it's almost becoming this new genre, and that's awesome. Like seeing how this type of gameplay can be applied to like different worlds, different types of characters is so cool. The one that honestly blew my mind that is a really common comparison is the Mario Rabbids game.
Yes.
Um, that game is so much fun. I loved it. But I remember when they announced it, and I was like, oh, that I never would have thought like to take like a similar kind of idea of like this turn-based action strategy that we used with aliens conquering the world and Mario Rabbids. Like, whoa. it was really cool and like a super fun game.
Yeah, that's the best clone, I guess. So you're working in a company founded by legend, so Sid Meier. Have you met the man? And tell me about him. I was working with him, and he's amazing. I want to know more about him.
I'm gonna have a sip of water real quick.
All right.
And then yes, I'll tell you.
Me too.
Okay. Oh. Okay, so yeah, Sid is honestly like one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Imagine saying, all right, Sid is not a good man.
Yeah, no, he's just so pleasant to be around. He's really humble. He knows who everyone is. He's kind of like the superstar in the industry. He's
Sure.
been around since the microprose days, obviously. But he's just, it never changed him, I don't think. Like he's still really passionate about just making a fun experience and like working with like designers and like helping people try out new ideas and innovate. And he's just freaking nice, man.
He's a civilized man.
he truly is. Yeah.
Right. So I read this article by Polygon that he was involved in Chimera Squad design, and it was very interesting to see him still challenging the game with new and never seen before tricks and ideas.
Yeah, Sid is always around and his door is always open. All of the designers at the studio like bounce ideas off of each other. They all work together and share things and talk to each other, and that's how you end up with a fun game. Just like that iteration process, and it's definitely challenging to do that, but yeah, like talking to different people, getting different opinions. I know there were parts of the game that on paper like Jake Solomon was like, no, that'll never work, and then he played it and was like, oh wait, this is like really fun. So yeah, I don't know. It's cool to see how that process works with like, these creative designers.
Is it true that he has his own engine to try out new ideas?
Sid is always like prototyping random stuff, and I never know, sometimes we see things, sometimes we don't. But yeah, he's always tinkering away.
Cool. So outside the work, you've recently started streaming games on Twitch, and it's so cool to see your passion not only in making games but playing them too. Let's talk about learning and being up to date by playing games. When you start a game, what are the first things you notice and focus on as a gamer and
as
a
a
developer?
Gamer? Okay. Ooh, man. I mean, so one of my babies on Civilization 6 was actually working on the first time user experience and tutorializing it. And I think that that's, since I did that work, that's something that I really focus in on when I start playing a new game. I mean, obviously because it teaches me the game, but also like I look at it very critically and I'm like, okay, well, what is this doing? what are the choices they made, and like how are these mechanics being presented to me, and is it effective? Um, and I think actually the most like effective tutorial that I've seen recently was Planet Zoo. Um, and that is a wowza deep game. But you can also play it very like very high level, and then you can also get very micro into the trenches. But I thought they did a really good job with their tutorial scenarios. And it just kind of blew my mind how layered it was and how these mechanics were presented. And then it gave me enough to go off on my own and then keep discovering and keep learning more. And it kept the experience fresh, which is what you want, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely like the first thing I noticed is tutorialization. And then UI.
Oh yeah,
Always UI.
It's so hard now that I think about it. It's so hard to make a tutorial for a game like Civ or XCOM
Yeah.
for the new
Yeah, and
users.
it's funny because like you don't end up tutorializing the game until quite late in the development process, because obviously the game needs to be very finalized. You know, you need to make sure that you're tutorializing systems that are locked in, um, and you know, putting UI on top of something that's not going to necessarily be there in 6 months. It's like, oh, okay. Um, but by that time, you know, you're not getting as much feedback from players, so it's a really challenging part of game development. Um, but it is what it is.
Yeah, one has to do it. So, what games are you playing right now?
I'm playing Animal Crossing
Oh
a
man.
lot. So it's funny. I played Animal Crossing once in high school, and I didn't like it. And I think it was because it was real time and I wasn't getting enough like gratification from it. But I saw all of my friends were playing it, and I'm like, okay, I gotta try this again. I gotta see what's new. Like, it didn't hook me back then, but they have definitely hooked me now. I've been nonstop with that game since I got it.
Yeah, I played the game for like an hour, and I was like, no, 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 this is gonna ruin my life. This is so addictive.
Yeah. Yeah, I was playing this morning as soon as I woke up.
Sooner than a coffee. So,
Yeah.
name me 3 of your favorite people in the game industry that you're always looking up professionally.
Okay. So you might hate me for how I'm going to approach this.
Oh,
I don't want to pick 3 people. I want to pick 3 categories of people.
all right. No, that's better.
Yeah. Okay. So I think number 1, I would say indie gamers or indie developers. I go to a lot of conventions just for fun, like anime conventions, game conventions. Not now, of course, because of the pandemic, but in the before times. And you know, there's always
Good old days.
Yeah, the good old days. But there's always those like indie gamer sections or indie developer sections, and they've got their booths set up and they're showing off these like really cool things that they make like in their free time. And that's a passion, man. That it wows me. Like, it's always something new. It's innovative because like there's no one saying, oh, you have to be able to sell this to X amount of people. And like there's no risk because it's not their job. Some people it is, but for most people it's like their thing they're doing for fun. So they can like try out these crazy bananas things, and like that's where you find like really fun different games. So like shout out to the indie developers that are just trying new stuff and like making amazing art and programming and like doing all this after they've already worked like an 8 to 10 hour day at a job somewhere else. So yeah, that's my number 1. Number 2, I'm going to say the veterans in the industry. Kind of the opposite of the indie gamers. You know, these are the guys that have been around. They might have a way of doing things that, like, you know, I say us younger folks, I've been in this industry for 10 years, but but I'm talking like people like Sid, people like Brenda Romero, people that have been there since the 80s. they've seen the evolution, and that is a wealth of knowledge that like you're only going to get from someone that's been in the trenches for 20, 30 years. And just they have this insight into how games have changed, how development's changed, how like players have changed. And that's really useful. And it's also just really interesting. I love hearing stories from like people that have been around for a long time. And then my third, I'm going to say parents.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that's on the horizon for me eventually. And so I really look up to people that have this job that they love, that can be really challenging, but it does take up a lot of your mental time as well as time. And then, they've also got families, and, they're still like great dads, great moms. So yeah, people that can kind of balance these two different passions together. That's super cool.
Wow. That answer was way more smarter than my question.
Oh, no, it was a great question.
Thank you. All right. So tell me 3 of your most favorite games of all time. Yeah, this is challenging.
Yeah, these questions always make me have like a small existential crisis. Like, I've been playing games since like I could hold a controller. Like, my 3 favorite games of all time. Okay, well, I'm gonna go with Sims because I started playing that in probably middle school, and I'm still playing it now. Like, that's the primary game that I'm streaming is Sims 4. I've sunk a lot of money into that game. I had every iteration of it, and they do a really good job of like every iteration keeping it fresh and new, but also like being The Sims and having those familiar parts. I've still got like people that are freaking out, and then they like light something on fire, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." And like that's something that was really funny in Sims 1. It's still funny now, like I don't know, 20 years later. All right, next one, we're going to take a left turn. I'm going to say Fallout 4.
Oh.
Yeah. So I really like the Fallout games. I played 3. I played New Vegas. I didn't play 1 or 2. They just weren't on my radar. But I fell in love with it when I started playing 3. And Fallout 4 had a great story. Like, I had a lot of moral contradictions playing that game.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And it was just a really cool experience. And plus, like, the base building system that they added, like, I went ham on that. I made like awesome little bunkers and little towns, and just having that extra level of building gameplay on top of this like cool open world RPG.
Yeah, you made a Civ game out of that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. I loved it. And then, okay, so for number 3, those 2 are the easiest ones for me to pick. For number 3, I'm gonna go with Batman Arkham Asylum.
Nice.
When I beat that game, there was a moment where I was like, wait, did I just beat the game? Because I think it happened so soon for me, because I don't beat games. Like, I'm busy. I do a lot of hobbies, and beating games is rare for me. And like, I just was so sucked in, and then I won, and I was like, whoa, is that what that's like? That's a good feeling. But like the lore in that game, like the mechanics, everything was just chef's kiss.
Yeah, the first one, Arkham Asylum, is my favorite of the series too. There was something new about that. Exactly, like,
Yeah,
I've never seen a Batman game like that. It was so interesting. Exactly, I had the same feeling when I beat the game. That was a cool answer. Yeah. So, what games are you most excited to play in the future?
God, what? I haven't even been paying attention really, because I've been playing so much Animal Crossing.
More Animal Crossing. I'm excited to play.
Yeah. Yeah, what's coming out? So I've got a pretty good backlog of games that I want to play. Like, I really want to play Red Dead. I love the Grand Theft Auto series. I think it's super fun. I love the open world games. My best friend, who I lived with for a couple of years, she played a lot of Red Dead, so I saw a lot of it. But I've never played it myself, so definitely Red Dead. And then I heard something the other day. Was it Assassin's Creed? Valhalla?
Yeah. New Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't looked at it yet, but like the lore of that has me intrigued. Yeah, I'm very much, I think I pick my games based on the story they tell. Like 2 games with very different stories, but the mechanics are the same. I might hate one and love one. I don't know. For me, it's all about the world, the characters, the story. Like, I'm a writer at heart, and so give me a good story, and I'm gonna love it.
Yeah, I'm so personally, I'm excited for Cyberpunk.
Yes. Oh yeah, is that soon? Do we know?
Maybe it get the. I don't know. It's end of the 2020, but
okay,
maybe it get delayed
this year,
because
maybe.
of yeah.
Yeah,
there's
that's the thing. Like everything.
Next month, I guess we have Last of Us 2. If you're into yeah, that's exciting. Yeah. All right, before I let you go, please talk freely to the female listeners of the podcast. Girl to girl, tell them your last words. Your last words? That came out wrong.
My last words. Oh God. Well, as I'm about to die, which I just found out. Oh man. Okay. So yeah, there's definitely a stigma, I think, in this industry, even in like the player space, that it's tough for women and girls. And it is, but every day is tough. Like there's bad people everywhere, and if you love this, if you're scared to like get into games because you're like, people are going to be bad, like if you love it, you got to just do it. You got to do what you love. And there's rough places everywhere is what I'll say. Like I've definitely had incidents at jobs that have been outside of games, actually far more than in games. And there's definitely a push in this industry for inclusivity, of women, different ethnicities, just people with different stories to tell. And I think that's super important, ethically and morally, but also like, because that's what's going to make new, fresh games. That's what's going to, the people who aren't here yet, they're the ones bringing new ideas to the table. So don't be scared. Like, there's going to be tough times, but we're here for you. Like, we other women developers, we got you back.
This is so nice. So, thank you so much, Sarah. You're so cool. Your games are cool, and it means a lot to me and talented people working on or dreaming to be working on games around the world. Your words are inspiring. Your career is inspiring, and keep working on awesome games.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. This was great. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.